He's the creative director for Aardman Animations. I'm not sure if Indian teachers will have seen characters like Wallace and Gromit, but Dan's here to tell us all sorts about how they produce games and digital content at Aardman Animations. So I'll hand over straight to you.
Yeah, I suppose I've tried to be helpful by gathering understanding of why we, the We Love Games refers to we as in a company, but also why generally people around the world are obsessed by games, and inquiring about how specific and to go into kind of things like the psychology. And I decided actually it's probably better to mull over the top, but if anyone wants to invade my brain later and try and talk about the psychology of it, that's quite an interesting subject as well. But we love games at Aardman. Aardman Animations. So Aardman's been around for about 30 years. It's a bit of a crown jewel in the British kind of cultural scene. So I feel very honoured to work there. It's been around mainly playing with clay quite a lot. It's all stop motion animation, but actually they get driven not by what they're known for, by their clay, but their drive in life and their mission statement is about making characters that people love. And so we've come along as Aardman Digital, the digital department that's been set up in the lab 3 or 4 years, and our job is to try and find homes for these characters and for the worlds and the stories that Aardman already tells, but new digital homes. So we're always looking for places where to put these people, these interesting people, like Wallace and Gromit, like Shaun the Sheep, Rex the Runt, it's a bit of a strange one, but it's a favourite of mine. Purple and Brown, there's all these kind of different characters that are mainly for kids' TV stuff. And so the kind of homes we find, the stuff we do across everything, involves quite a lot of multi-platform. So this idea that when you sit down, you don't just sit down and watch a TV show anymore, you watch the TV, you play the games, you go to the website, you visit the live event, and nowadays we so want to consume everything about a particular character that we're interested in doing all that. We look after our community, so we build up these communities and entertain them and keep them happy, and every so often tell them off because they're being naughty, but generally try and nurture these communities. But then probably the thing that we do the most is we make games, and it was a very easy transition for us as an animation company to move towards games because it involves a lot of the characteristics of the characters. They're in a world, they tell a story, and the animators are all kind of interconnected to it. So we kind of make lots and lots of games. And some of the games we've made, sorry, I'll go back here, not to confuse matters. Some of the games we've made have been for educational purposes, and in fact right now there's a project that I have to be very vague about talking about because I'm under a non-disclosure act, but we're currently working on looking at the psychology of helping people learn through games. So it seems very suited for a large British broadcaster. I mean, I'll be vague. So my brain's full of this stuff right now, hence I'm kind of quite into the psychology and the geeky side of it as well. So we're the digital department. Just to get a picture of what everyone does in this building, there's about 450, 500 of us. But we make feature films, we make commercials and small animations, we make TV shows, sell the rights to all the stuff we've made, and make digital stuff. And this is our digital team. I don't know how well you can see them, but just to give you a sense of the kind of people that are in our team, we've got producers that tell us what we should be doing and when we should be doing it, usually quite a lot, and they shout at us quite a bit. We've got coders that make games and design stuff. We've got game designers, so we've actually got people that are there thinking about the psychology and the processes within games. And we've got animators and designers and community managers, so people that sit there and talk to our communities and nurture them. It's a mix of all of those different types of people. And I've got a little thing so that I don't carry on just constantly talking to you of a little show reel of what we've been up to recently. Hopefully that will come on.
Groovy Moon Counting Quiz. Sign with me.
up your mouse and log on to our World of Invention website.
Today we're going to be looking at the ejector seat.
Love now, bye! Whoosh.
Bits. Now I realise I've already talked about this thing, the fact that we all make games. My belief is that in the same way that stories are intrinsically part of human nature, stories are a very useful way. I thought you touched my bum.
No, it wasn't happening.
I thought stories, they're intrinsically part of human nature. They seem like they're a very successful way in which we pass down knowledge and information and kind of complex ideals. Games and kind of gameplay have been passed down for similar periods of time, and therefore, interestingly, must be part of our psychological kind of profile, what's inside of us, our desire to do things. With stories, because it feels like such an old cultural part of what we do, it's been discussed, and the psychology is part of it. It feels like games are kind of an overarching psychological kind of subset of really just challenges and our life and our desire as humans to find patterns, to see patterns in the world, and to master them, to get over these patterns. And when you start thinking about games like that kind of psychological drive in which to understand the rules of the world and master them, you can also kind of slide over quite easily to start talking about learning generally, and our desire to understand the world around us, and our desire to master the world around us and have a greater control over it. And I feel like what games have allowed us to do is to have reduced some of the messy complexities of the world and give you this nice little subset where you feel like you can win, and you feel like you're allowed to fail, and you feel like you're allowed to do a lot of these things. And so actually by learning some of the things that are so compelling about games and transferring them to some of the things that we want people to do in the world, like learn and get better, we've got a really powerful tool to do it. And what's happened is because the game industry has appeared, because money is now behind it, and because people are playing it, and because it's starting to be appreciated as a genuine media form, not just something that 16-year-old boys do and they'll grow out of it. What's nice is that we're actually starting to get academic about it and starting to look at the psychology behind it. So for this reason, we love games, and everybody, loves games as well. Everyone's got a desire to do it. Now, I don't know if this is true in terms of what I'm about to say, but I personally think that even if you say that you're not a game player, in life you play games. But it's difficult for me to tell this because I do this generally. I walk down the street and make decisions, guess what's going to be round the next corner, or see whether I can get past the next lamppost before the car passes me, or throw things into a bin from a distance and win, because we like to challenge ourselves and do these things. I'm assuming that everyone has a little bit of that in them, but I don't know, would people agree? Do you all think? Okay, so everybody loves games, they just don't quite always know that they do. A proof of just some facts and figures that you could take home to show the power of it. This is, I'll just turn this one down. So this is a game we did called Home Sheep Home, and it's the adventure of three sheep, a little tiny one, Timmy from our Shaun the Sheep show, a jumpy one, Sean, and a big fat one called Shirley. And it's what they call a physics puzzler, so you're trying to get past a number of puzzles using these three sheep and the physics that are in there. So this first one, you just push it down and jump over. Now we made this in about 12 to 16 weeks. So are the facts and figures useful to you? I'm trying to work out. I'm assuming that if you're going to make some decisions on whether you're going to take part in making games or joining in, it would all be useful. So I'll keep saying them. If no one's gone, no, shut up, okay, I'll keep saying everything. So it took about 12 to 16 weeks making this game, and this has been an unusual but absolutely massive success for us, unusual in the amount of numbers that we've ended up getting. I promise I'll shy away from geeky graphs too much, but it just gives a sense of the amount of people who play. So this is the first 6 months, and that 900,000 is per day. All of a sudden, within like a week or so, we had about 900,000 to 1 million people playing every single day.
Is that online?
This is online. So very quickly, the technique we kind of use is we we build it, we give it out to a number of the gaming portals online, so these websites that exist, and then we hope that everyone steals it and nicks it and puts it onto their sites, which they do if it's a good game. I wasn't planning on saying this, but this is definitely a good point. If you want something to work virally, I know people say, oh, we need it to go virally. There is no magic number or magic thing to do. It just has to be a really good game. It's just a side thing on that. But we've had, in the last 2 years, I just checked, so we're slightly over 2 years, but in 2 years we had 105 million plays. So that's a lot of people that we're inspiring, a lot more than the TV show, if you think of every play compared to every watch that we've had, all of them, when you add up everything around the world. And has helped Aardman come to realise that actually these are really powerful things and they should be done. Admittedly, there's money makers as well that are interested in how you make money, but I would like to keep the altruistic side of it, which is we're also very interested in how we can use it to inspire people. It could be argued with that last one, Home Shoot Home, that it's purely for entertainment value, and therefore it's easy. It's Shaun the Sheep, it's really easy to do. People just like playing. So I wanted to also show this one, which is a game that we did with Wallace and Gromit, but for the Intellectual Property Office, the IPO, who are in charge of giving out the patents and the trademarks and the copyrights for all of the creation that's happening in the UK. And they were really interested in there's 2 games we're going to show by them. But in this case, they were really interested in just getting a load of people to an exhibition, so it was still a kind of advert for it. But we wanted to get as many numbers and people up there, and so we still ended up with, there's about 16, 17 million people playing stuff. So there's some big numbers that can be done if you build a good game and get it out there. You can get a lot of eyeballs. But I think what was interesting, one of the more interesting games we've done for them, and where we started learning as a company that we shouldn't just be making these things just for eyeballs, but we should be doing it to inspire people and get them involved in it, was this game called Sprocket Rocket, which the Intellectual Property Office came back to us and said that was so successful, it's still the largest thing that's happened on our whole site. Can we do something good with it? We really want to teach kids about intellectual property. And intellectual property is not really a very interesting subject. Ideas are, and inspiration and innovation, you can get kids excited about that, but then discussing with kids about the fact that you must protect your ideas felt very against what their belief systems are, which is they just want to make ideas. They don't worry about protection because they don't worry about the value of them, and they don't worry about money at this point. But we wanted to try and at least get them to understand the processes that you should protect your ideas under. And there's very, very vaguely, there's 2 different kind of techniques, there's 2 different extremes, polemics of ways of inspiring someone through games, and that this is definitely a very dumbed down version of it. But it feels to us one of the old ways that people used to do it is, here, have some fun, play some fun, oh, and now please listen to this fact, or please be tested on this fact. And it was almost bartering with the kids. It was like, here, we'll give you some fun, but only if you get past this barrier of proving to me that you've learned something. Which feels like a kind of like smashing together 2 things. It just didn't feel like it was a useful way. And so if there's one thing to take away about this, I would say, is that what the best educational games, or the best educational game, I think is a flawed word in itself. The best games that teach people have aligned their processes as closely as possible. So the things that the kids are actually doing, or the adults or whoever are doing in the game, are directly aligned with the kind of synapses that would be firing in their brains if they were doing it in the real world, or at least makes them think similarly. So in this game, there was, let me see if I can jump through, you're a tiny little spacecraft flying around, similarly a number of physics puzzles, so you've got to try and collect, this is the problem with making it automatic, you've got to try and collect these little cogs. But to collect them, you have to create a number of different tools. So you can create, that one's a spiky tool that's about to be used to push under something and lift up, or you can use heavy tools. But every time you create one, you get it patented. So by hitting OK, you get it patented, and you're starting to understand the process of both design and patents. When the game was loading up, you were asked to create your own logo, which is displayed inside your ship, and then it was trademarked. So we were just trying to make them understand what all these processes were. But I'd say this was quite early days, and it was it was when we were first getting into this, and we hopefully have done better versions of it. And I just want to take, has anyone talked about gamification in these last few days? Good, I didn't want to insult anyone, because there's this word that's going around right now called gamification. And it's a buzzword on the internet, you'll find it all over the place, but the meaning, I think, is meant to be that it's adding gaming mechanics, so those kind of things that are in games to non-games. They're trying to find things that are non-games and adding games to them. I personally think it's a really stupid word, and that's why I want to make sure that someone hadn't come in and done a big talk on gamification. They're going to attack me. Because just because we'd use, say, something like storytelling, if you're saying a speech, you might say things like an interesting fact or a twist at the end. And that's understanding the psychology of stories, but I wouldn't call it storification. And when you're teaching people, you wouldn't, because you use some teaching or learning techniques about the psychology of teaching, you wouldn't call it teachification. So in the end, I think it's just actually a form of understanding the psychology of it. Which is, and this is where I was trying to work out how deep to get into the geekiness, which is really behavioural sciences and the economics behind them. So we make a number of decisions in the world, and there's a lot of psychology about the reason why we make the decisions. Games are very, very good at poking us in the right place to make us want to do things over and over again. And we're basically just getting to a point where we're learning about that. So I've decided just to leave it at that, but show some of the psychology that we've used in some of our games to try and get people to learn stuff. That's useful. Right, how are we doing on time? Good. Yeah. Okay. Great. I've got a video that explains a project we did called World of Invention. It was a TV show, a 6-part TV show that was all about inspiring people about technology. It started with a conversation about the iPod, or the iPhone I think it was, and the fact that there's this sealed, beautiful object, but it's an object that you can't get into anymore. And 50, 60 years ago, everything would have been taken apart and it would have been fixed, and we'd have been building and rebuilding stuff. And even 25 years ago, you could at least take most things apart and you could get your car open and you could do things. And even 10 years ago, the back of the TV could come off, even though you probably didn't know what to do in there, you at least could do it. Whereas everything's shrinking, miniaturizing, sealing itself. If you open anything, you've got a void sticker. And we felt like this was going against our desires. In this particular case, it was the UK kind of all about inventors and inventions, and we used to be a nation that invented lots of stuff. And the BBC came to us and said, "Could we re-inspire people to desire to invent again?" And so from that beginning, we created a series of TV shows that were all about the human stories, the inspirational stories that had happened to inventors. But from that, we wanted to get people, I think the word the director used was get people off their arse actually doing something. And so we created a pattern, which I'll talk about in a second, to try and get people from the living room to playing a game, to understanding a bit about physics, all the way down to hopefully eventually becoming the next great scientist. But I've got a quick video. It's an award submission, so it bigs us up a little more than, I feel slightly embarrassed about it basically, but it at least explains everything that's there, so I'll just play it.
Wallace and Gromit's World of Invention is a groundbreaking cross-platform mix of animation, live action and interactivity that aims to inspire a whole new generation to go crackers about inventing. A brand new Wallace and Gromit TV show kicked the action off, with our famous duo setting up their own studio in Wallace's basement and broadcasting to the nation about some of the world's most amazing machines and contraptions.
Hello viewers, and welcome to my World of Invention.
But the show was just the start of this celebration of engineering invention. For the first time, Wallace embraced the power of the internet to issue a rallying cry to the whole nation to get out there and have a go at inventing themselves.
Grab your mouse and log on to our World of Invention website.
The website was the centrepiece of this campaign, giving the audience the tools, information and inspiration they needed to get involved and start making their very own contraptions.
Put your finger out and get clicking.
For those who weren't quite ready to get their tools out and get hands-on, the site provided an easy way in, Wallace's Workshop, a virtual laboratory game allowing you to build increasingly complex virtual contraptions and test them at each stage on a hapless crash test dummy, Wallace. While great fun to play, the game had the serious purpose of teaching users about important physics concepts and their impact on the engineering process.
That should do it. Oh, easy when you know how, eh, Gromit?
The launch created a huge buzz across the web, with a syndicated version of the game going viral and being picked up by a wide range of gaming communities.
Leave this one to me, Gromit.
An explosion of chatter across social media networks, and some users even creating and sharing their own tips videos on YouTube. For those who were ready to move on to making real-world contraptions, the website offered a series of hands-on kits, showing you how to make a range of quirky gadgets, from a desktop devil robot to a balloon-powered hovercraft. Each kit provided step-by-step instructions, downloadable guides, and how-to videos featuring the expert model makers at Aardman Animations.
You're going to have to blow this up loads and loads of times. But do be aware, balloon pop.
And for those who really wanted to step it up a gear in applying their newfound skills, the BBC and Aardman Animations launched a nationwide online competition to find the country's most imaginative new invention, with a prize of having them or their contraption animated into a future Aardman production. People across the country uploaded videos of their own unique inventions to be judged by a panel of experts headed up by Oscar-winning Wallace and Gromit creator Nick Park. And finally, to underpin the sense of national event, the BBC ran a nationwide tour of live events, giving people all over the country their chance to get hands-on at inventing. Across TV, the web, games, user-generated content and real-world events, Wallace and Gromit's World of Invention took multi-platform production to a cracking new level.
So, yeah, excuse the big buzz, but it did hopefully give a good overview of all of those different stages we were doing, and this is where I think it's interesting when you start thinking about the overall psychology of it, rather than specifically about the games, because this was our pitch when we originally said it, or what we were trying to do. And we knew that a TV show would go out and would hopefully, inspire people to do something. And we really drove them to try and take these first steps into learning, to get off your couch and start doing stuff. But then there was this, we kind of called it a ladder, though it's upside down, so the downwards ladder of knowing that games are such a great catch-all, they're such a great form of entertainment that you would get many people. And that by aligning the processes of small bits of electronics, of mechanics, of understanding weight distribution, and I think there was buoyancy in there, that by forcing people into small challenges where they're allowed to fail over and over again, but they've got this carrot at the end of trying to get them through it, that they will that they can learn, and every time they unlocked and learnt a new item, so for example the battery, we were then directly associating it with real things you could do. It's like, oh, you've just found out about electricity and using batteries. Do you know you can go and use this kit now to do that? So we were constantly trying to push them down this line. And at the end, there was the psychology we were trying to do is to drive them through some big carrot, I guess, to try and get them to get involved. And we talked about, we took the big ones. So it was sex, money, and fame is the kind of the main three motivators that you could put up there at the top. And it was the BBC, so sex was gone, and money was a no-go. So it left us with fame. And so we thought for quite a while about, what kind of thing can we do? How do we poke people in that desire to be famous? And so having their contraption brought into the next feature that Wallace and Gromit were doing felt like the best instigator. And so we were kind of using what you could class as gaming mechanics, the fact that you had a competition, you had a challenge, you had a goal, and if you succeeded, you won in the overall campaign. The final project I just wanted to very quickly talk about, because what was interesting, this wasn't really a game, but used gaming mechanics to try and get people to do stuff, was the Take Movie project. And the Take Movie project was a really large-scale, ambitious project we did alongside the what we called the Cultural Olympiads. So it was all the cultural activities that are happening alongside the Olympics. And it came from a very simple idea, which was how can we get thousands of kids all across the UK and all across the nation generally to help Aardman make a film, just to make a film generally, but at the end it became help Aardman make a film. And animation came up when they first said this word, and Aardman was brought in, and all of a sudden we were in this quite ridiculous situation that could be said so easily, that we ought to make, how do we help kids, how do we get kids to help us make a film, into this massive, over the top's the wrong word, massive interesting project with lots and lots of layers that supported kids from all around the nation to give us lots and lots of little bits to help us make a film. So the short version of the technique, because I could talk about this for hours as well, and I know you won't want me to, but is that we had a virtual film studio with a suite of characters. This is Ronnie. He's basically a bit of a stupid director who desperately needs support from the nation's kids. And we had a real production office going on in Aardman where we were making the production. And the kids got involved in everything from the stories at the very beginning, so doing lots of workshops and developing stories, about developing characters, scribbling on bits of papers. They happened all across the Tate art galleries, and then from that a story was constructed and slowly built up with a number of questions that were being pushed through this studio. So out in the studio would be, oh, we need to, if they go through this door, what happens next? I know one of the questions was, how do they get to the magic shop? I think the winning answer in the end was using the magic dinosaur. So all of this was slowly built into the film. And then on top of that, all of the images, all of the work, generally like everything, images, sounds, the music was done by school orchestras. Every single element within that film, apart from some of the story and most of the animation technique, came from the kids. So it's kind of massive gathering of stuff. But the bit that we found so enlightening when we did it was that, I'm going to find out my password here because it's kids-based. It's alright, it's not very secure.
Hello, my name's Ronnie, the director. I'm sure you've all noticed that the film was...
No, he's going to say the same thing.
Well, amazing.
But I just want to show you my desk, and in particular, the awards. We were trying to work out how to reward the kids for doing various things, and stole this from Gaming Techniques, which is just a really simple collection reward system, and added it. And this was, I mean, it's about 1.5 years old now, but what it highlighted to us was quite how immensely powerful this particular technique was. That their obsession in making sure that every single box is filled, and that they are winning in this kind of game that's being played, has driven them through all the studio, through all the creative processes to learn all the tools. And the things that we've noticed about it is, one, that it worked, that the people want to collect and win and succeed, but more importantly, because it was a social space, because they could show off to each other, that desire to win and succeed was amplified because they wanted to show each other. That was the extra little bit of psychology I wanted to put into that. And I'm kind of all done, but there is one final sign-off, I guess, which is just a little video that I always like to play because it's funny. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Dan. That was really informative and it's really interesting. interesting to hear what's happening at the sharp end of games development, and we're not specifically looking at the sort of educational side, but it's really interesting how you're taking Aardman and moving it forward and looking forward to that creative element and bringing the education in there. Does anybody have any questions for Dan while he's with us? We've got I'll give you a roving mic. To Mike, actually.
Yes.
One of the, I know we're talking about motivators quite a lot there, and one of the sets of cards are different motivators, psychological motivators for people wanting to play the game, and it's quite a condensed way of just looking through to inspire you. And it's also got kind of a victory condition. It basically breaks down gaming mechanics into individual cards, so it's quite interesting. I thought I'd say that here. If anyone wants to have a nose through.
The reward collection thing
Yeah.
that you had on there, I'm a sucker for all that. But does that help a particular type of person, age group or gender, or is it most people will go for that?
That's quite it. I can say more than I'd normally be able to say about this because I've been reading about it last week. But there's different psychological models that people apply to in particular to like achievements and the desire to achieve, and gaming generally. And there's a guy called Bartle, B-A-R-T-L-E, who's a bit of a gaming psychology geek, like put together, and he classes 4 different kinds of gamers. And kind of therefore 4 different kinds of psychological drivers. But one of them is an explorer or a completist. And so, I don't know if you're one of those. There's some people that just want to, because they've got 98, they want to get 100. And if there's lots of blank holes, they'll want to fill every single one. But then there's also what he calls the killers, which are really the very driven. They want to win at absolutely everything. And so their desire to collect these is less to do with, I want to get everything, and more just to do with the fact that they want to be better than the other people around them. And there's a couple of others, let me see if I remember them. There's an achiever, which I can't remember the quite difference, but yeah, I think the achiever wants to prove to themselves that they can win, but don't necessarily care about the social aspect. They're still an introvert, they just want to be the best at what they do.